So welcome everyone to our parent panel on living options for adults who are regional center clients. I'm Marley and I'm on staff at Parents Helping Parents, and we're located in San Jose, California. We have about 110 people signed up tonight, and we are excited because they're from all over the state of California, which is great and in line with our new program, Connections California, which is a new program at PHP where we are delivering more information and content to families anywhere in California who have children who are either approaching adulthood or in adulthood and just have questions about how adult services work. It's kind of like being at the bottom of a mountain and trying to figure it all out. And so Amy's here, and I'll introduce her in a minute, but she's going to ask questions because she's at the bottom of the mountain. I'm a little further up on the mountain at this point, but nowhere near the top. So I think, when we were thinking about putting this together, living options is such a critical foundational piece for anyone, really. When you become an adult, where are you going to live? That's where the hub of your life is. So as we think about this for our adult children, it's complex and it's overwhelming, and making a plan isn't easy, but we can all do it. And it's important to do that because I have on this screens life disparities for adults living with disabilities and their families. And you'll see that 7 out of 10 adults with disabilities live with their parents or guardians. So that's a really high percentage of people. And there are other options, but they're complicated and not everyone knows how to access them. Only 17% of adults with disabilities live independently. And when parents were asked, how confident are you that your child will always have a place to live? Only 45% of parents whose child has a disability strongly agree that their child would always have a place to live. So that's a pretty, sad number, and it speaks to the angst that we have as parents. Like we're so used to scaffolding our kids, and our parent panel tonight are all moms, and if there are dads out there, we applaud our dads for being here. But a lot of times we find that anything with child rearing kind of falls in the moms sector. So I have a whole group of mama bears here who are just fierce advocates for their kids, and I think you'll learn a lot from them tonight. This little chart, and don't worry, these slides we will share with you. They actually came out in your reminder about tonight's meeting, but they'll also be in a thank you from Zoom tomorrow. So this slide here, it kind of describes the different options: at home, group home, affordable apartment, shared affordable apartment, private shared house, and an intentional community. So those are kind of the groups of living situations you might want to choose for your child, or at least research. And then the rest of the form there gives you kind of costs and who the cohort is, like who your child be interacting with, what kind of service options are available to you, and what the availability of that is. So don't worry too much about this, because our panelists we're expecting that most of you don't know a whole lot. You're here to kind of get more foundational information, and this will be coming out to you, as I said, after the event. So let's get started. Let me introduce you to our amazing mama bears. I'm going to start with Amy, and I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. My name's Amy Parham. I work at PHP, and I'm the mom of Ava, who's in these photos here. She's 17. She's turning 18 in like 2 weeks. We are in the throes of figuring all of that out. And as resourceful and connected I feel by working at PHP, I am utterly confused and overwhelmed and a little paralyzed by the whole process and learning something new every day. So we want for her to have some sort of independence in her own way that she can have, that includes some meaningful relationships. And, my husband and I were ready to explore things on our own and not be doing all the daily caregiving tasks. And we realized that's a monumental transition that's going to occur. So we're trying to figure out what the next step is. First step is conservatorship, then not sure yet. So that's why I'm here with you.
That's
try
why
and
she's
figure
here.
it all out.
She's here to ask the questions because she needs to know the answers.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Next, I want to introduce Laura Mcgeever.
Hi, I'm Laura Mcgeever, and my husband and I, Mark, live together in San Jose. We are actually both retired, and our son, Christopher, is 30. He's got cerebral palsy. He does also have a feeding tube, which makes placement in a group home, which is what we've chosen, a little bit more difficult, but he doesn't have seizures, and he just loves being with people. So he's not picky. He's one of those easygoing, go with the flow type guys, and he's a very happy person. He's cognitively about age appropriate. I always say he'd rather watch Fast and Furious than Barney. It's the example I use. He does have an younger sister, and one of the reasons that Christopher is living in a group home is that my husband and I want to make sure that she doesn't have to have something that's very difficult to manage. We'd like him to be with others, and we want him to enjoy his life, but we also want his sister to be able to oversee from a distance and not have to be involved in the day-to-day workings as we go older. Christopher's care isn't that difficult. It's just, like Amy was saying, it's constant. So you just have to keep things going. And as we get older, it's just more difficult. So that's the situation. He does live in a group home. San Andreas Regional Center coordinates the SSI and does pay for that. So I always tell people that all our tax dollars are going to keep my son very happy.
Nice.
So
thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Laura. Next, we'll meet Shireen.
Hi, good evening. My name is Shireen Carr, and you're seeing a picture of my family, a recent picture of my family, and that's Taylor in the wheelchair there. She's quite the diva. My husband and I live together. I'm retired. My son and daughter-in-law and grandchild. Taylor has severe and multiple disabilities, both physical and cognitive. She lives with a caregiver 24/7 in a 2-bedroom, accessible, subsidized apartment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's see who's next. Esther.
Hi,
Welcome.
Esther.
Hi, I'm Esther Juarez, the mother of Kaz, my son. He's 36 years old. Kaz is diagnosed with IDD, and he falls in the autism spectrum as well. He receives SSI, and he is a client of the Golden Gate Regional Center here in San Francisco. Currently, Kaz lives at home, and it's because of safety reasons right now. But Kaz wants to venture out on his own and live independently. And right now, we're in the process of applying at a CLE, College Living Experience, which is an inclusion program in Monterey, where they will teach him independent living skills as well as working towards a certificate or degree in the career field that he would like to fall into.
Awesome.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Debbie Drummond.
Hello, I'm Debbie Drennan. I am the parent of John, who is 30. I'm there with my husband. We like to go to see shows. Jonathan has cerebral palsy. He does not have any intellectual disabilities to go along with it. He does now live, as of December of last year, he lives in a place that he was able to purchase through winning a lawsuit. So I encourage everybody, all those class action lawsuit notices you get, go for it. You never know. I was shocked at how much he actually won out of a class action. It shocked me, but he had to make a choice. He had to spend that money within a certain amount of time, or he'd lose the benefits of IHSS, which he needs to provide for his care. And he chose to look into purchasing, and he lives in a mobile home park now that we've made accessible for him. Therefore, I incur no expense. He does work full time. So he is able to pay the space rent out of his salary that he gets from his job, as well as utilities. So it's working out really well. He lives with care providers that live there with him. It's a couple, and they are paid through both in-home support services as well as supported living services through the regional center. And that's John.
Okay,
Awesome.
Debbie.
And let me just say that Debbie was on staff here at Parents Helping Parents for many years and has just left us to start her own assistive technology business. So we're glad to have her tonight because she's just family to us. So thanks,
Thank
Deb.
you, Jen.
Okay.
All right.
So we've got questions for our panel. So we thought we thought of what we thought would be very common questions. So we're going to ask each one of them a question. And then after each one of them answers a question and has a little back and forth, we're going to go to questions from the audience. So let me just say, if you have questions as people are talking, use the Q&A on your Zoom toolbar. You'll just click that little Q&A on the toolbar and type in your questions there. So that'll be great.
Yeah, let's get started. And just a reminder for tonight, we have some handouts for you in your Zoom confirmation emails, and will show up again in your thank you for attending, because we might be dropping some acronyms and words that we don't quite understand. So, don't worry about trying to keep track of those right now, because those are all going to outlined and defined for you later on. Okay, so we're going to get started here with Esther. So thank you for being here, everyone. Esther,
Yes.
you chose the most common option, which is living at home with your son, Cass. Can you tell us what are the benefits and challenges of having Cass at home? Have you thought about other options? Do you still want him at home? Like, how is all that going?
So the benefits of having Kaz live at home is that I know he's safe, because I still don't feel Kaz is ready to go on his own, live on his own independently due to trusting others. He's very gullible and he trusts everybody. Kaz has a big heart. So we've had experiences where people were panhandling and Kaz would give them his money. And he believes what people say, the story that they tell him. Also, my biggest concern with Kaz is his safety, because he'll trust somebody and he'll go with them. If they say, hey, you want to go to my apartment, you want to go play some games, and I still have to give Kaz the right tools and resources as far as having good judgment and using good judgment. Right. And so the challenges are that he has 3 younger siblings who have gone to college. They've graduated, earned their degree. They studied abroad. They live on their own. And that's what Kaz wants, because he feels he's the eldest. And why isn't he experiencing that lifestyle, that quality of life? Yeah. So I'm working on that right now. And he has a house here in San Francisco that he knows will always be here, but yet Kaz wants to, fly the nest.
Right.
And it's going to be hard for me to let go as a helicopter mom.
Sure. Well, and I think we probably all agree, and I'd like to hear from Laura, what's the, there's benefits to having your kid at home because, you're mom and
yes.
You're kind of like number one.
And I think everybody here had their child at home for quite a period of time
yes.
during adult years. So
yeah,
who else wants to jump in here?
Yeah.
Yes, I was going to jump in. So the benefit of being at home is that you're at the best golden ticket as far as taking care of the child. As yes. we all know, no one can take care of your child as well as you. The doctor often says, Laura has 1 patient and I have thousands, right? So there is no one that can take care of your child better than the family. So that is the big benefit. But the challenge, my son's not that big, but the challenge is, physically I'm in good health, but something as simple as twisting my wrist means I wouldn't be able to carry him. When I was pregnant with my second child, I couldn't lift my son for 3 weeks. Right. So there's definitely big challenges like that. And then living at home, my son needed care all the time, so I can care for him. But we did have care providers, and that's tough. They in our world, it was about 12 to 18 months, and they would leave, all of them. So we had care at home for 20 years. And during that 20-year period, we had over 30 people.
Wow.
And each one you had to train, and each one you had to oversee, but they all have limitations, and they all, in my world, they would all just kind of get tired of doing it. So the challenge of maintaining constant care, and for my son, the challenge of keeping him entertained. I was fortunate he wasn't home during COVID, but he's no longer eligible for an adult day program in the area. They don't want his special need. So currently San Jose doesn't have any openings for him. So he would be home full time. So the challenge for us is keeping him amused.
Got it. How about you, Shireen? What was your experience keeping Taylor at home? You're on mute. Shireen, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. No one gives better care than mom. Nobody. And that was the challenge. One of the challenges was finding that balance of what I felt comfortable with. Certainly going through, just like Laura, the in-home support service workers, they would stay 12 to 18 months. 18 months was a very long time. And then finding the right caregivers was difficult. So there are challenges to that as well. What was nice was having them at home. The in-home support services workers would come into the home, and my husband or I, we were always here so we could help oversee, answer questions, be there for them. And out of the home, you're not there. And so of course we're available by text and FaceTime and everything else, and even cameras. But even that, it's a challenge.
Yeah. Anything you want to chime in on with Debbie?
Ditto.
Yeah.
Ditto to all of the above.
Yeah.
The issue I think that needs to be considered is, especially with the way things are today, is finding those caregivers. It was nice when he was home because we were always the backup caregiver when the caregiver couldn't come for XYZ PDQ reason, right? We can no longer be that backup caregiver as easily. We would have to go to him, right? So, and it's hard to find caregivers. We were we were told it could take, when John found his mobile home, he was told it could take up to a year to find caregivers for him.
Right. Okay.
But we got very, very fortunate. And we were able to find a couple through an agency within 2 months, which is unusual. And we acknowledge that. So we acknowledge how hard it is to find a good caregiver and hang on to them with everything you have.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay. All right, Shireen, let's go on to the next question here. What helped you get through your decision-making process? It's so complicated, it's overwhelming, deciding on what type of living arrangement you want that works for you, because they're also very individual too. So if you can tell us about, your process in making those decisions, that would be great.
I think with Taylor, she's 28. She has the cognitive disabilities. She understands most of what you say. She's nonverbal. She has CP, a severe seizure disorder. She's non-ambulatory. Food is pureed. She lacks the ability to chew. Saying all that, she is very social. She has a boatload of friends. And so for us, I think early on, I just knew that the goal for me was she was not going to stay at home. I wanted something sustainable for her. I wanted to live my life. I knew exactly when I was going to retire. So I knew at 62, gal's got to be out of here. Okay. So setting her up was important for me. I wanted to enjoy my grandchildren, my other child. Initially, I thought she would leave home at 18. I thought, you know what? She's got to go to college just like her brother. Well, guess what? She wasn't ready. It just, life happens. It didn't go that way. She wasn't ready. We weren't ready. But we kept the eye on the goal, always on the goal. And I think we assessed her needs as she grew to find out what it was she was going to grow into in terms of what were her needs. And, you know, what was it she was going to be able to do? What did she need help with? We always thought about that end game. It was one of those things, just keep your eye on the target, just on the target. Don't focus on it every day. Go through your day-to-day stuff, because that stuff is overwhelming at times, just getting through the day-to-day. But for us, or for me, I can't speak for my husband, it was always kept the eye on the target. Didn't know how I was going to get there, but it was, you know, focusing on the goal. What did I envision for her? With in-home support services, just like Laura, we had numerous workers come and go. And we identified one that we grew to trust. And she worked with us for 2 years while Taylor was still at home. So we really got to know her. And then when the opportunity for the housing became available, she became a 24-hour live-in caregiver. And we were pleased. She had come from living with an adult with severe disabilities for 7 years. So she had background. I knew she was true blue. And and she was only 29 when we met her, but that's who she is. And then finally, they live in a 2-bedroom accessible unit that was built for people with disabilities. It's run by Eden Housing Management Company. They run the physical facilities. But everybody there, most of them are her friends. She knows everybody. They have group activities in the community room. And so they're creating a community for each other, and I incur no expenses. And then finally, just to talk about the network and support that I used throughout the years, San Andreas Regional Center supported living services, in-home support services. I joined every Facebook group that I could get my hands on, every one of them, asked questions, listened most of the time, because there's some really smart people in those groups. And I relied on friends in the business, and certainly PHP. Oh my God, the resources at PHP also helped me. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Shireen. Debbie, can you have anything you want to tag on to that?
Sorry, hit the wrong button. I'm here. I haven't left. What helped me through that decision process was really because my son is not intellectually disabled, was him. And basically, you know, if you will, a person-centered plan that he created. He knew what he wanted. He wanted out. He wanted to have a job. He wanted to be independent. He didn't want to, he liked living at home. It's easy living at home, but that's not really, wasn't going to help him grow into being the full adult that he could be. And he knew that. So really, he was a huge part of the decision-making process. This is what he wanted too. So it helped knowing that to move forward.
So you were able to consult with him.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Esther? Are you talking about that with Cass?
Yes, I am. And Kaz wants to live so bad on his own that he even suggested that I move out. That I move out to a different city, and he can stay here in his house in San Francisco, and he'll be here on his own.
Right.
So he suggested that I maybe find a place out in Modesto or something, being that I like the country. I'm like, really, Cass? So, which I don't mind doing. I've even looked into that, and having him stay here at the house where he's familiar with his surroundings and environment, the neighbors. I know he would be in good hands. It's a familiar place where I feel he would be safe.
Right. Yeah. You keep talking about safety. That's a big
Yes,
thing.
yes, with Cass, yeah.
Yeah. And how about you, Laura?
So we also consulted our daughter because,
Ah,
one of the realities, and all of us have a special needs person in our life, we hope to live a long, beautiful life and, way beyond our normal years. And she doesn't have to carry that burden. But as we know, we roll the dice and we might not be able to take care of him. So we did talk a little bit with her about it. And we had always made the decision, even when Christopher was little, that Alicia would go off to college and Christopher would go to a place of his own. So my husband and I were pretty much on the same page. Not always, but most of the time. And then we also did leverage talking to our daughter and say, hey, you're going to be involved long term. The care provider situation for us is just colossal. And we, stepping in sporadically to take care of him, it doesn't seem that realistic long term. So, that was part of the decision-making process. What helped us through is talking to our daughter and talking to other people. I mean, we actually did speak to all the options that are being presented in the room. We didn't have to do that at home, but we did. I actually talked to Shireen, and I talked to an intentional housing, and I talked to a co-op. I mean, so I talked to all the options and asked them, and what is the worst case scenario? And then figuring out, like Debbie said, you have to decide what you can live with and what makes sense for your child's intellect and abilities.
Right. Yeah, and just a reminder that don't worry about these acronyms for those of you listening in. We'll have some information for you. And also, if you have questions for any of the panelists personally, we'll be sharing an email with you at the end of the webinar so we can get in contact with you. Okay, question 3, Debbie. Okay, after moving your child into their own living situation, how do you stay involved but not get in the way? How do you give them their roots and wings?
Yeah, that's it. True, roots and wings, right?
Yeah.
Well, we started young. I mean, first of all, as already been said by many of us, no one does it as good as mom. We know that, right? But we started young with John in terms of making sure he knew what he needed in terms of care. So to what to ask for, right? So that there was no surprises. And it's the little things like, helping clipping his nails, to doing the laundry, to helping with going to the grocery store because physically he can't carry. Just those kinds of tasks that all need to be done by somebody to help him out. And, when you're a teenager, it's really hard to say these things that I need help because mom just does it. So what we did, we started with intentionally writing down everything I did. Like I would write it, he'd say, oh, I need help with, I was like, oh, write it down. And I had him take the lead on that. And then the first time he moved out of he was gone, it was an overnight or 2 nights or 3 nights, I forget how many, was a camp run for youth with disabilities called YO, Disabled and Proud. And it's for youth with disabilities who are interested in becoming leaders. And so he went off to this camp, first time away from mom, but he had this list that we had created of all the care needs he would need at that camp to give to this unknown care provider. We had no idea. We didn't get to train him, right? But this was such a great learning experience for him. And the camp was good too, but this was the best learning experience for him in terms of helping him see what he needed to ask for. So he's been prepared. And then when he went off to college, he was in the dorms. So that also prepared him even further. He was able to go to UC Berkeley, where they had a program at the time where they had attendant care available for all the incoming freshmen while they set themselves up on the attendant care and, through in-home support services. And that was really helpful as well, because these were attendants who knew the area, knew the students, knew what was available, and could really hook John up. Mm-hmm. So I was able to slowly back away because I knew that he was capable and able to express what he needed. Mm-hmm. Now what I do is I talk to him at least twice a week, text, phone, whatever, and twice a month, because I'm not a trusting person. I need to get better at this. I go visit him in his apart. I see him more than that, but I go see him in his home so I can look at the home. Is it being taken care of? Is, the laundry being done? Are the floors being mopped? All those kinds of picky things that I'm so particular about, but I want it to be right because I don't want his home to be destroyed. And I want the couple who's living there to be happy as well, because we want to hang on to them because they're fabulous. So I'm always like praising them. Anyway, I give them a lot of praise. So that's kind of what I do to, so it started young. We started young with him because that was always his goal. And we just kept going.
Right.
So.
Right. How about you, Shireen? How do you stay involved without getting in there? You're on mute.
I have a great relationship with the caregiver, and we have actually a couple of other caregivers that go in to help Taylor to relieve the other caregiver. And of course, my husband and I take Taylor for weekends and, probably at least 3 to 5 days a month. She's with us too. Give the caregiver a break a little bit, and so she can do her thing. But we talk almost every day. The caregiver and I, we text all the time. For example, today they went to the Hollister market, food market, outdoor food market, and she sent pictures, that kind of thing. It's like, I want to see what she's doing. But we have a good relationship, and we do text and call, and I go over. She lives 4 minutes from my house. So I'm able to pop over. I like to check that, the house is clean, all that kind of thing, laundries, exactly what Debbie said,
Right.
gives
Nice.
a chance.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How about you, Esther? How are you working on,
I think I would see Kaz more often than Debbie or Shireen, maybe twice a week.
Mhm.
Just pop in just to check on him, just because of that safety and making sure his needs are being met, that he has groceries, his laundry's done, his place is clean.
Mhm.
I think I would pop in maybe twice a week until Cass tells me to back off. But yeah, but I think it would be hard in the beginning. It's just like when my kids went to college out of state in Chicago and South Carolina. I cried for a month. I felt so empty. Yeah, there was a big part missing, especially when my twins left to Chicago.
Yeah.
It was, and I know with Kaz, it's gonna hurt more.
Right.
But
Right.
it'll be a bittersweet story.
Sure.
It's for his benefit.
Right. And you, Laura?
So Christopher's been in a group home now for about 4 years, and I would say that it's usually twice a week at a different time of day.
Mhm.
So I don't know how well I not get in the way. So that would be my perception. So I don't know how well I do that. But I do try with the care providers to, bring cookies or bring snacks or, try to say thank you. I think the hardest part is my disposition is very forward, and I intimidate professionals. So you can imagine intimidating care providers. So the hardest thing for me is to just be quiet. So, coming by and trying intentionally to come by without making a comment. So today when I went by, I went and brought my pictures because I went on a recent trip, and I just sat there and looked at Christopher's pictures. I asked 1 or 2 questions. I made no criticisms at all. And then I left, and I made sure my visit was less than 45 minutes. So the frequency, the amount of times, and then try to go by where you're intentionally not saying something. And one of the things that Debbie and Shireen didn't mention is there was a home that we stayed at where Christopher was wearing the same shirt all the time. It was clean, but what they would do is that shirt was the most comfortable one. So easy for them to put on. So I took the shirt away.
Right.
One day when I went, I just looked in his drawer and I took it. And they did that with my dad. I don't know if anyone in the room has elderly parents, but we visited twice a week when my dad was in elderly care. my sister and I would go by at different times of day. Each of us would try to give some sort of recognition to the staff. And we would do things like go in his closet, see if all the clothes made sense. Because when you're in a group home, they could end up with somebody else's clothes.
Sure.
So, that, and then like Debbie said, making sure when you go to the bathroom, is this up to my standard or not?
Right.
Um,
all those details that you take maybe for granted at home, that you have to then be, either let go or more vigilant, in a different kind of living environment. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the final question. Laura, we'll start with you. Share with us what it's been like for you emotionally to have your child live somewhere else after so many years of you being the caregiver.
so
How's it for you emotionally?
yeah, so I would say that I had a little experiment by my son going to camp. So he's gone to VOS for 20 years. At age 7, he started going. And by the age of 26, he was going 4 to 6 times a year. So I got used to him not being with me all the time. He was also in an adult day program and I worked full time. So I was used to not having him with me. The emotional part that was difficult is trying to figure out how much it mattered for certain things, like the shirt, wearing the same shirt all the time. And whether or not you feel guilty, right? So, I have lots of friends that have known me since Christopher was born, and having those discussions about, yeah, he's not getting this type of attention, or he's not able to do this type of activity, especially during COVID. They had him locked down where we couldn't physically go in and see him for 15 months. So, having the reality of how do am I being selfish? So I think that that's something you kind of have to come to terms with. I know that a lot of people in special needs community do not go into a group home until they're in their 50s and 60s. And my husband and I perspective was, for our son, it would be easier for him to go in his 20s and his 30s than it would be in his 40s or 50s, because he would be more attached to us. So emotionally, yeah, it's whether or not you feel guilty, whether or not you feel that you've given him the right atmosphere, that he's not being deprived of something because you're no longer having him in your home. We do have a lot of pictures there. Having care providers that communicate with you is nice, but they don't always do that. So, emotionally for me, it's dropping in. And we actually have chosen care provider. We pay old care providers to drop in and say hi to him. I mean, we have somebody that's dropping by like every once in a while we're just going to pay her. And then we had one provider that you just never know. So we had somebody that we didn't think was that caring. And sure enough, she's the one that visited Christopher on her own. And she's still 4 years later visiting him. So, and I will share one piece of beauty. She actually was telling somebody about visiting my son in this group home during the pandemic at Christmas time, and said, yeah, I'm going to go see him. And, it's a little sad. And they go, oh, so the people that she gets her hair done with all got together, 5 women, and got gifts for every person in that group home.
Oh,
So at Christmas time, they delivered packages to people they've never met, just out of the kindness of their heart. So that's how you emotionally deal with it. You're realizing that there's more good in this world, and there's people that have their heart in the right place.
Nice. How about you, Shireen? How about that emotional piece with Taylor living in her own place?
I like Laura, and I think others started with via West, the camp. Once I found out about it at the Abilities Expo, I never thought that would be an option for Taylor, because she was so severely involved and, required so many, medications and food preparation, and Via West met that need. And that was kind of our introduction, like Laura, for having her be away from us. And it was very emotional the first time that she was not with us for the very first time. She was, I don't know, probably 18, and that was hard, but good also because, I had to trust. They knew nothing about Taylor, and she does have so many needs, and they did it. And that gave me faith that we're going to be okay. Somebody else can take care of Taylor,
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Deb?
Well, I think because John is intellectually intact, I was ready for him to go when he was ready to go. When he was ready to spread his wings and fly, I was ready for him to leave the nest. The most difficult time I had emotionally was when he decided he was going to spread his wings and go live in London for 9 months. That was terrifying because I could no longer be the backup for anything. I mean, he's in London, right? If something happens, it happens. I can't do anything. I didn't have a backup person. I always had a backup person that I could call. Like when he was in Berkeley, I knew people who lived in the East Bay who could run over there and be there within, half an hour. Right. So I always had there was no backup person in London. I just had to, grow some gray hairs and have faith that he could do this. So there were challenges. There were things that did not go well, but he was able to manage it. And we could talk him through stuff over the phone. And that, again, when this opportunity came up where he had to spend the money to move into a home, I knew he could do it. I had that faith in me. And we had been on waiting lists, like with Housing Choices here in San Jose for years, looking for a place for him he was ready. There was just nothing available that met his needs.
Right.
So I was ready. He was ready. We were ready.
Right. And how about you, Esther, as you're kind of you're in the process of, Cass wants to go, you're working that out.
And I'm kind of wondering, you're worrying about safety, but is there an element that's you're just not ready? What do you think?
I think Kaz, once he gets into this program in Monterey, the CLE program, Kaz will be ready because he'll have the right people helping him and supporting him there. It's me.
Mhm.
It's me because I'll be by myself. And in the Latino culture, the traditional culture, like with my grandparents and everything, we were taught you don't send your kids away. There's family, that's what the family's for, and you don't send your parents away. We all take turns and rotate. And so when Kaz was diagnosed with IDD, I taught his younger siblings, this is his medicine. If you see Kaz look days or something, that means he's going to have a seizure. Get ready. This is what you do. And then you call 911. So they started young, my kids did. And so in their eyes, they said, especially my youngest daughter, who's 29, and she's graduating from paramedic school, she said, Kaz will live with me, Mom. That's one thing you won't ever have to worry. I will make sure, even if it's a duplex, Kaz will always be with me. And Kaz and her are best buds. And so Kaz is so great with kids. And she goes, yeah, Kaz, you're going to be my babysitter. You're going to be my living nanny for the babies when Mom's not around. So, and Kaz is all for it. And so the kids are, because they know that's my biggest burden. What's going to happen to Kaz once I'm gone? I want to make sure he's safe and he has a productive life and lives a normal life just like his siblings and does everything he wants to do. He wants to study abroad. And so they told me, don't worry, Mom, we got him. We got him. So that kind of calms me down a bit because I raised my kids good and to be united as one.
Okay, great. Well, this has been a really, really, really great conversation. Thank you all. We do have a few questions in the Q&A.
Yeah, time to move on to your questions. So
yeah.
So thanks. I think we'll start with because there's the goal of having our kids move out, and then there's the how on earth do we make that happen? And there's a lot of that piece. The question is financial, right? So the question was, can you share a bit about how varying living options might be financed? Since their SSI is so limited, I don't see that covering my son having an apartment. So the SSI wouldn't cover that. So how do you finance it?
Why don't we start with Shireen on that? Because the question was about an apartment. So tell us what you did, Shireen.
Housing Choices is one of the vendors with San Andreas. And if through the IPP, the personal plan, individual personal plan, they will put Housing Choices in if you as the parent request it. So you start getting those services and you meet with Housing Choices and they say, what do you want for your kid, basically? And well, I want subsidized housing, and I was very specific. I want the one in Gilroy, period. I didn't want any, and they have housing all over the state. And they have a lot in San Jose, Palo Alto, all over. And so I applied with Housing Choices and was told it was going to take 5 to 7 years. And it only took 18 months. And I also, not trusting one avenue, just one, the Housing Choices, I also applied directly to Eden Housing for the specific housing unit that I wanted, which is called Via Esperanza. It's 21 units that were built for people with disabilities, developmental disabilities specifically. And so that's how I got started. And because it's subsidized, Taylor, gets her SSI check, but her rent is so low that she has enough to sustain her. Plus she gets, of course, CalFresh, which provides for her groceries.
Does she have a Section 8 voucher?
Yes. Yes, it's a section.
Yeah,
That's the subsidized housing that she has. It's a Section 8. It's an 811, which is specifically for people with disabilities.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on. So still on options. Let's see. How about, so this would probably be mostly for you, Laura. Is there an online list of group homes and other housing options sorted by region or county?
So the answer is yes, but it's not very defined. So what the state of California has done is they have their licensing organization put all the group homes in the state of California into I will give Marley the link, but basically you can see all of the group homes that exist in the county, in your neighborhood, in your zip code, but it doesn't break down what level they are. So every child and adult is designated what levels they are. And with that, your regional center has to actually tell you what each one is. So you can see all the group homes, but you can't see which levels apply to you. Once they tell you, hey, this home is open for you, you can go online and see, well, what sort of evaluation was done on this house? Has there been an inspection? Have there been problems? You get to see all of that. And there's different types of group homes. So they're categorized, regular group homes, a little bit more medical group homes, and specialty group homes. So all of the group homes have a different website to go to. And I'll share that with Marley and Amy. And then as far as the regional, your different regional centers will have a better list. San Andreas Regional Center, if you ask them, can you give me a list of all the homes my son qualifies for? The answer would be no. So they may have the ability to do that, but they will not share with you homes until they feel that there's ones available to you. So even though there's over 350 group homes in Santa Clara County, there may only be 7 of them that my son qualifies for. But if those 7 don't have any openings, then the regional center is not going to tell me about them.
Right. And can you just explain real briefly about the levels?
Yes. So very briefly, based on, there's a form that your San Andreas Regional Center person will fill out. and they'll determine what level they are. There's 4 levels. You could be as simple as you're delayed, but you're completely functioning. So you could be in a group home with 6 individuals and all of them are functioning, but they just need some oversight, kind of like Esther's son. He just needs oversight. He doesn't need someone to make every meal. He doesn't need someone to bathe him, but he's going to need someone to guide. And it can be as high of a level as, I have a friend who has a foster child who is violent. She actually will throw things at you and bite you. So that's going to be a different level. They won't put those types of people in the same homes.
Okay.
So there's levels 1 through 4, and then within 4, there's A through I. And your regional center will work with you to determine that, the level of support for each one of those changes. And you can get the regional center to tell you what the different levels mean as far as nursing and support.
So within the home, there'd be some parity there with all the residents.
Yes. So what they do is the laws say to pair people based on intellectual ability, but the houses are really based on physical need.
Okay. Okay, great. That's very helpful.
Okay, let's move on to a question about caregivers, because whether you're in a group home or an independent living, or it could even be respite, right? Like we all have caregivers that we rely on. And so the question is, do you worry about a high incidence of turnover with caregivers? Who manages the hires? And especially if you're not there to do the hiring. Who wants to take that one?
I'll take that one because this is what we deal with, right? Because he is living in his own space with caregivers. He is in charge because he's not conserved at all. He is in charge of hiring and firing his caregivers, and finding the caregivers. Because he is in-home support services, which is a California state funding source for caregiving, as well as supported living, which is through the regional center. The IHSS sometimes has a list of IHSS care providers who've gone through the training and have been vetted by IHSS that you can access to start interviewing. I say sometimes because right now they have nobody on the list at Santa Clara County. That's how hard it is to find them. My son has, because he's lived in several different places, he has gone on Craigslist and found the worst people on Craigslist. Don't go on Craigslist. He's used Nextdoor neighborhood to find care providers who already are IHSS certified and providing care for somebody in the neighborhood. So it's easy for them to pop over. He's used neighbors. He's used his Nextdoor neighbors, asked them to be IHSS so that they could help John out because they're right there and then they get paid for it, right? So
like
creative.
Care.com or
I'm sorry?
what about like care.com or?
Care.com is expensive. It's like $25 to $30 an hour. We can't afford that.
Okay.
Realistically, that's not something that is affordable for him or me to pay for.
Okay.
So there's
And then
another
paying
question.
privately is equal to that, if not more. So thus we rely on the systems that we have in place in California and beg, borrow, and steal.
Yeah, and for those of you who are not in California,
Each
I think
state is
most
different.
people- Yeah, most people here are, about half are from outside of the Bay Area,
okay.
but it seemed like California.
Okay.
Okay.
There's another question, and this is just, and it would be a good question for me because I didn't know very little about all of this. But, when you're talking about care providers, there's a question about, so do you balance that with you doing some of it, them doing some of it? Isn't there a way that you can back out and not have to be any part of the caregiving? Is there a way?
I'm nodding my head. Yes.
Shireen, why don't you talk about that? Because Taylor lives completely independent of you. So how do you deal with caregivers?
I have had great luck finding the best caregivers through the local community college nursing program, and I get the certified nursing assistants. And I've established a relationship with the instructor in the program. And she has helped me find the best. And it's the nurses, because I've also gone through the child development majors, and they're lovely, but they just kind of want to read to Taylor. Whereas the nursing assistants, they're used to changing diapers and doing the feeding and meal prep. And it is a wonderful step into the work environment for a recent certified nursing assistant. They love, they're very freaked out. Oh my God, I can't do this. And we're just very reassuring. And certainly now Taylor's main caregiver, her live-in aide, trains those that go in. But we did that for years. And they quickly calmed down because Taylor is pretty easy. And she's really lovely. So finding caregivers is not easy. I also post on Nextdoor. I post on Facebook. I post on the other caregiver pages, Facebook pages and groups that I'm in. I've done local churches, certainly the school, the nursing program, kind of blasted all over. Yes.
Yeah, and we had to subsidize. We could not find anyone who would work for IHSS staff, pricing. So I'm very impressed, Debbie, if you found anyone, because the only people I ever found that would work for that were personal friends who just needed a few bucks. So we did have to subsidize, and we took the subsidy amount. So the state now, I guess, will eventually pay $16 an hour, but if they pay $15 an hour and the people want 20, we'd pay the $5 difference. We would withhold taxes on that $5. Mm-hmm. And one of our biggest problems was people not wanting to be reported. And we would find people on care.com, believe it or not. And we've found the majority of ours, and we're in a different state than Shireen. We actually liked people who were not nurses, because all the nurses we found wanted to care for his needs, but not care for his intellect. So we avoid nurses with a passion when we had it in our homes.
That really speaks to the individualization of all of this. There's it's kind of like this a la carte, building your own, buffet, if you will, of using all of these resources that you have to figure out what your child qualifies for, and then how do you use it, and how do you implement it, and what do you, and so there's no single answer to any of this. So it's very, very individualized. Is there any more questions, Marla?
Oh, we've got a lot. So some of these are going to be for each panelist individually. So let's see. There was a question about ADUs, so accessory dwelling units, which are those small, like studio apartment or small home that you could build on your property. Did anybody look into that, or anybody know anything about that as an option?
We looked into it for our home, but in order for, we didn't have the land to build on in our house. The home that I live in now, we didn't have the actual land to put another unit in. And in order for an ADU to be an actual ADU and not lose their benefit, that they can show that they're living in their own place, it has to have a separate entrance. You have to make it have a separate mailing address. So there's all these different requirements, not just for the ADU part, which is the county, but it's also to maintain the benefits that you need to maintain, the in-home support services. And if you're looking at supported living services, it has to have a separate entrance. It has to so there's different things to think about when you're looking at ADUs, if you want to maintain your benefits.
Where did you find that information, Debbie, about the ADUs? Was that through the regional center, or?
It was other parents at Parents Helping Parents.
Okay.
There is a parent that I know at Parents Helping Parents who has done the ADU option with their child in their home.
Okay. So I think this whole conversation about the ADUs, there's a couple of things in the chat or in the Q&A about sort of less common living options. We chose tonight to be just sort of like 1.0, right? This is just sort of the basics, the most common options that are available to people. There are many, many more that are more complicated. We're not going to talk about those tonight because we want to respect that some of us just don't know enough to even, like, we're overwhelmed already without like all these additional layers of complexity. So, but you can certainly ask us and in the Q&A, and we'll just see what anybody has to say. Let's see. Debbie, you mentioned your son went to UC Berkeley. Did any living support service did UC Berkeley provide any kind of independent living services? What kind of housing did he have?
Okay, at UC Berkeley, he lived in the dorms all 4 years. And because that's what worked best for him in terms of accessibility. Because he uses a wheelchair, so it has to be an accessible dwelling. They had a program when he went to Berkeley, which is different now, where for the incoming freshmen, the UC Berkeley would provide the attendant until they could find their own attendant. And they actually, and they still hold this, there is a class that they have the incoming students take with disabilities who do need attendant care and other services. It's a 6-week or it's a semester class that all the students, freshmen, have to take to really kind of talk about the services that are available at Berkeley, how to access the services, how to talk for yourself. They have a large population of individuals with autism at Berkeley that they really work with them in terms of self-advocacy so that they can be successful in college. And that was just, we were very fortunate that John could get into Berkeley to access those services. He also did receive independent living services while he was at Berkeley through the regional center. That's not personal care, but it was somebody who would come in and help him manage his filing, his checkbook, banking, that kind of thing, that he didn't really want a personal care attendant to manage. So that was somebody else who really helped support him with his independent living skills and kind of talk through some different things he could do to maybe be more independent in doing that.
Okay. Just one quick add-on for you, Debbie, because I think most of the parents here probably don't have kids who went to Berkeley, but did you get any kind of help from the DOR for your children that went to college?
Yes. And this is a separate conversation, and this isn't about housing, but Department of Rehab, you can apply when you are transitioning out of high school, if you are going to be going into college or need any sort of training to get employment, you can apply through Department of Rehab. They will help pay for the training components you might need. In John's case, they did pay for like his books, his assistive technology, college tuition. They did pay for that. They would not pay for the home. That came out of our pockets. So the housing was us, but DOR paid for the educational training needs he needed to be employed. And he actually now is working at Department of Rehab. So it worked.
Okay, let's see. Does anyone know, this person writes in, I live in Southern California. Is there something like Housing Choices or Eden Housing in Riverside County? Does anybody know that?
I don't know about Riverside, but Orange County definitely has programs for housing that are affordable housing. So I don't know how you find them. I would say you should go to your regional center. They would just like in Northern California, the regional center funds the housing options. It's not, they don't help you unless the regional center says, here's a check to help this special needs person. So you would go to your regional center person and say, I heard about this. I know you must have something. You guys need to fund this, and it has to be part of the IPP.
Okay, great. This is for Shireen. Shireen, how do you spell Eden? Somebody wants to know about Eden Housing.
I literally just typed the answer in. It's EDEN.
Like the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Okay, got it. Okay, perfect. Let's see. Okay. How would we begin to learn more about supported living options? It's clear, ! That the regional center doesn't help. We have to find this info out on our own. Where do you start?
Okay. So I have changed my regional center person more than once. You can find out about ILS and all these other services, but I would actually ask for a change of providers, and I would go to the extent of asking for a change of managers. If you've spoken to the manager and you're still not getting answers, because they really do hold the purse keys. So if they're not willing to support you, then it's a very difficult battle. So you can look up ILS and you can get the definition, but to get the service, you're going to need the regional center's help, is my perspective. So Debbie, what's your perspective having used ILS?
So could you repeat the question? I wasn't sure it was ILS, SLS, regional center. What was the main focus of the question? Can you repeat the question?
It was just, sorry,
Sorry, you're doing 5 things at once, Marley, are you?
It was how do you get that the regional center is, this question was that the regional center has not been helpful.
Got
So
it.
how do you get the information? It was
Okay.
specifically
So
about-
Laura, I back up what Laura says is you can always change your provider, your case manager at the regional center. That is within your rights. But also you're here. This is the first step, is connecting with the other parents. I find a lot more information talking to other parents who are further along in the journey, as they say, than I ever got from our regional center case manager. And we've had lots of regional center case managers. That's part of the problem. They kind of cycle through pretty quick. I find out most of my information by being connected at Parents Helping Parents. And if you're not here locally with Parents Helping Parents, you can look for another parent training and support agency, Parent Family Resource Center in your area. And there's lists, I'm sure that can be shared as to where they all are within the county, and find another parent to talk to. What are the resources in your area? That's where you start.
okay. I'm looking, anybody else have any other questions? There was a question about just, some of these more like intentional communities, or some of these living options that you would buy into for, a fairly sizable amount. I think the one that was written in was like $50,000 maybe a year. I've heard big communities that could be a huge buy-in, like $500,000. That we chose not to deal with that here because we know that that's a very few number of families that would be able to access that. But if you're interested in that, you can certainly call Parents Helping Parents. Or look at our resource directory. So on www.php.com, we have a resource directory, and you could find intentional communities that have self-listed themselves there.
Mhm.
So they're always looking for new families who are looking to join and participate. And each of them, I think, works kind of differently. And we have people that we know here that have set up their own intentional communities. And so there are, and we say that that's sort of like 2.0, right? This is the basics. This is the most common things, most accessible options. So and maybe we'll do another webinar that will be more on, other options that are more complicated than these. But these seem complicated enough to me tonight.
Yeah.
How about you, Amy?
Yeah, for sure. There's, like I said, there's so many ways that we can build a living arrangement and a future for our loved ones. And, having no size fits all, it's really important to understand what's available and, what's the impact financially, emotionally, all of that.
I think what I've taken away most from even being a part of the panel is the diversity in terms of what the needs are and what the fit is. My fit is very different from Laura's, very different from Debbie and Esther. What works for me won't work for them. What works for them won't work for me. So I think it is finding what works for your situation.
Mhm. And I think it's also understanding what the resources are available. So
So I have a question about that in the Q&A right now. So, it's all very complicated, these funding streams, because there's several different ones and how they all work together. It takes a little research. So someone's asking, if your child has IHSS while they live at home, will they be able to keep their IHSS if they live in a group home?
No,
No.
you lose all your benefits. You get no respite, you get no camp, you get nothing, because they're taking care of your room and board, basically. So they have the care providers. If you want to hire your own care provider to complement them, that's up to the group home, whether or not they allow you to have another a person come in or not. But you need to, if you feel your individual in your life needs more assistance, you need to lobby the regional center, and honestly, continue to build your case. I mean, for my son, he's had a one-on-one since he was 5 in all settings. So when we went to a traditional group home, we were granted a one-on-one, but the house can choose whether or not they think it's necessary. So you really need to figure out your child's needs, and the regional center can supply extra staffing like a one-on-one in addition to the group home general ratio, but that should be being built all the time. That your IPP is the golden. I make them write every single thing down. They don't like me. I mean, I say something as silly as make sure he's sitting in his wheelchair while eating, so that so people aren't tempted to just feed him when he's in bed. So
this is kind of a follow-up question. Can a parent continue to be the IHSS caregiver after the child turns 18? Is there any age limit on that?
Nope.
No age limit. So if your child's at home, you can continue to be paid to be their IHSS caregiver.
Yep.
In my case with Taylor, I continue to be an IHSS provider. I am still one of the providers. She has several, and I'm one of them.
Okay.
And Debbie could do that too then.
Mhm.
Yes, I could. Although actually no, because the supported living services, individuals take the IHSS money first, and then they are supplemented by a supported living.
Ah.
So I can't be an IHSS provider anymore unless they need respite. Then I can do it.
Another complication.
Let me ask you guys, you might not know this, but this is somebody from Southern California. They're saying that in Southern California, a regional center does not have available options. I'm assuming that's group home options. Is that possible?
Not probable. There's a very good possibility that no group homes are currently available. Just like I mentioned earlier, that there are 350 approximately group homes in Santa Clara County, but there may be no group home suitable for your child. And yes, that is possible that in your county, they usually do it county driven, not regional. There is a good possibility that your county doesn't have anything. For my son, it took over 2 years for us to find a group home that would accept him. So that is possible that there is not a group home available. Whoever this person is, please reach out to me. I can give you a variety of creative ways to see if those homes are available, even if the regional center is saying no homes are available. Because unfortunately, the owners of the homes are the ones that open up and say, I have an opening. If they don't click a box saying they have an opening, they could have an opening and just choose not to tell anyone yet. So there's group homes all over the state that are open, but the administrator or the owner is choosing not to tell people about that opening for various reasons. There is a possibility that your county or where you live, there is nothing currently available that they know of.
Okay, sad but true. Esther, somebody would like to know a little bit more about CLE, the college living experience. So Debbie's son went to university as a person with physical disabilities, no intellectual disability. Kaz is going to go to college with a program that supports people with intellectual disabilities. So how does that work and how does that get paid for?
So the CLE program, we met with the director today to go over the application. And so the regional center pays a big part of it. And then I think I think it's like 56,000 or something a year. And that does not include his housing. So I think she said that the regional center pays up to about 45,000. They could pay more, and then we would have to offset the extra costs. And I was going to use his SSI check that he receives monthly towards that, and see what other kind of funding I could get to help pay the tuition.
Okay.
I don't know if Dora would pay his educational portion.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was gonna suggest having him apply for Department of Rehab and see what
Oh.
they can do.
Because he is a client with them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so have them change the IPE.
The whole IPP.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's see. Has anybody considered self-determination? We aren't dealing with that here tonight, but that's a whole separate webinar that we need to talk about. But anybody looked at self-determination, which is basically, Debbie, why don't you just give a brief summation of what self-determination is?
Sure. Self-determination is a program through the regional center where you don't have to access vendorized services. You have to go through a whole process with a person-centered plan, and then specific goals with a plan, and have a separate personal financial person. And then through all of that, they come up with a plan with an IPP where the individual can say, okay, instead of I would like to be able to go horseback riding. I think it would be a good recreational opportunity for me. And I have a recreational goal, and the horseback riding isn't vendorized, but I'm going to pay for it out of my self-determination. As long as it's agreed that it is a part of the IPP goal by the team, and everyone's given a certain amount of money per year, they evaluate how much money in total you need for you to meet your goals based on who you are and what your goals are, what your needs might be. And then it comes out of that fund. So it's just basically a way of giving the individual the ability to choose the services they want.
And Debbie, is it correct that you then have to pay the vendor?
Yes. Self-determination is you then pay the money out of that chunk of money. Right. And you can get a financial person to do it for you. That's part of it. There's several levels of self-determination. So you can get somebody to be your financial person who does all that payment of stuff. That is an option. But if you're interested in self-determination, I really recommend you go and find out more about it there's some really good resources of information out there on self-determination.
I think we have an e-learning video in Parents Helping Parents at parentshelpingparents.com that
right.
talks about self-determination.
And there's also the Disability Voices United of California. They do a lot with self-determination as well. Really good resource there as well.
I'll put that in the chat.
Okay.
Debbie, you might know this one too. Do you know if children with disabilities can join the armed forces?
It depends. It depends, because generally it depends on the type of disability. If it's a physical disability, no, because they still have to go through the boot camp. They will not make in the boot camp. They make some accommodations for some disability, but they're prepping all the individuals in the armed forces for serving on the front lines, right? For being a soldier, for serving on the front lines. So they don't do a whole lot of accommodation. If they feel that your disability would prevent you from being able to be on the front lines, they'll just say no at the outset.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I know people who have had like anxiety and ADHD who go into boot camp, and one did not make it because their anxiety kicked in too hard and they were kicked out, and the other one did make it. So it just depends.
Okay. So Esther, I think this is another one for you, although it could be for any of you.
Sure.
Someone's asking, well, how about respite? So I'm assuming they're talking about when your child is at home, even when they're an adult, do you still get respite?
Yes.
Yes, I've never used it. I didn't even know I was eligible for it, or Kaz was. But I found out that I am eligible for it through the regional center.
Okay.
Yeah, we used it.
You used it. Okay.
Yeah, so we, from the age of 3 until Christopher left us home, we would do date nights every single week with respite.
Okay.
We used it as well. We used
Okay.
the respite hours. And of course, once she moves out, you lose those hours.
Yes.
But when she was home, yes, we used those hours.
Okay.
And just like IHSS, you can work with whoever's taking care of your child and get them to sign up through an agency. So if you have someone you feel confident in, and we just hired people in care.com, but basically we would find somebody and we found a regional center authorized vendor who would hire that person.
Okay.
So I didn't have to hire them. They hired them. They got paid a slightly higher rate at one point than IHSS. And most of the time they were taking care of my son when he was asleep. So they didn't care. I mean, they got here at 6, he was already bathed, fed, and ready to go to bed. At 8:30, he went to bed and they stayed till 11. So they basically had to work 2.5 hours and they get paid for 5 or 8. So they were like, yeah, you don't have to pay much. I'm just literally doing whatever I feel like. So
There's a question about that just is more of a statement, but it says, our son is on the SDP, which I'm assuming is self-determination program or plan. And we are trying to reinvent the wheel, or so it feels. So it sounds like there's a little bit of overwhelm in that. Does anyone know, can you choose self-determination and then back off of it if it just doesn't work for you?
Yes, you can do that. It is overwhelming. Self-determination is overwhelming to do. I get it. And in fact, I think PHP is, correct me if I'm wrong, Marley, I don't know for sure. I think PHP is actually going to be running a group for families who are trying to do self-determination to try to figure it all out. And just information and sharing of resources and supporting each other through the process, because it is a bit much. I don't know when that starts, but I believe that's coming up
Yeah, it is.
later this year.
I don't know exactly when it starts either.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another question about self-determination. Can you use it to help your child move out to their own place?
So I'm under the impression, yes, because when I was looking at homes, they said, well, if you choose this type of home and then you switch over to a self-determination program, you're going to have more money if you decide to do it by yourself. So it's very, like Debbie said, it's very driven by how they piece together your needs. For me, there is no group home that takes Christopher. That's not federally funded. So I don't have to think about it. But if you had a child with a different type of need, there's lots of group homes. There's homes for other types of needs. And you could work with the regional center most likely and say, hey, I want them to stay here. The group homes aren't available. I found a place. This is how much it costs. As Debbie said, you've got to be very well organized, lots of documentation for them to give you the money.
I think I'll just jump in here because a self-determination needs a lot more time than we have tonight.
Yeah.
So I think we're at the end of our questions, but before everyone leaves, I wanted to just say that we will be sending out with our thank you from Zoom tomorrow, some resources. So we have an e-packet on housing, which will give you links to things like housing choices and other programs where you can start some research. We'll have a definition of what ILS and SLS is, because that's very confusing. The acronyms and specialized terminology that you'll need to know. There will be a page on that. We have some e-learning videos at php.com on supported living that you might want to watch. And most importantly, if anybody wants to connect with one of our panelists from tonight, we can do that. You can send us at webinarevents@php.com a email with who you'd like to talk to and what you'd like to talk to them about. I'm trying to just, not give out their personal information so they get a whole bunch of answers or questions that, are overwhelming, but we'll kind of try to group them. But for sure, everybody here has been very kind with their time tonight, and in the future, even if you're watching this on e-learning in the future, if there's somebody that you wanted to talk to, it's possible that we can connect you through the webinar events at PHP. So I think that's it. Amy, you want to say any wrap up?
Yeah, I just want to thank all of you, Esther and Laura and Shireen and Debbie, for joining us tonight. I have
You're welcome.
Thank you. I have so many answers, and I have even more questions. And even I've been taking notes along the way of some things that, you know, every time I hear from a parent that's a little bit ahead of me, I always learn something new. And it's always inspiring for me to look back and think, okay, what do I want for Ava? How can I create the buffet, for her? So thank you so much. I think you guys are some of the most valuable assets in our community. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I can just make a plug. So Amy's in our marketing department, and she is on our development team, which is a team that raises money for us. So as you may know, most PHP webinars and support groups and services are free. We charge for very little. We want to continue to bring high quality, information to families like yours. So please consider making a voluntary donation to help us continue this important work. And thank you everybody for coming, and we'll see you again on a webinar or event in the near future.
Yeah, please email us if there's we want to keep going on this conversation.